Hey everybody, it's Ben and I'm back with, surprisingly, a video after a largely unannounced and unplanned break or sabbatical from YouTube. I did put an update on the your comic community Facebook page for those of you who are members on there, and I put a link to the update on my Twitter if you follow me on Twitter, which all the links for everything as usual will be in the description. The YCC, my Twitter, my Google Plus, and also if you're new to my channel or new to my videos and this is the first video you watched, by all means please feel free to click the subscribe button down there if you like what you see. So yeah, apologies for the largely unannounced break. Just real life and university commitments and all the stuff that takes the fun out of reading comics in your spare time just got in the way. So without further ado, let's get into the subject of today's review, which will be I, Vampire Volume 3 Wave of Mutilation. Written by Joshua Hale Fialkov, and this final arc is illustrated by Andres Sorrentino, Dennis Calero and Fernando Blanco, who were the main three artists on this final arc, with Marcelo Maiolo continuing to do the colouring on the series, and this final volume collects issues 0 and 13 through 19. So our story starts out and we have essentially the 0 issue, or the origin of Andrew Bennett in 1593. And it opens with Andrew writing a letter to his lover, Mary Seward, explaining the situation. That he's actually the first letter he writes is actually to his mother, explaining that although Mary is just a servant in the Bennett household and is below Andrew's class of nobility or aristocracy, if you will, he does love Mary with all his heart, and so he under the after his father, Lord Bennett, casts him out and takes away not only his family name from him, but also his heritage and his family fortune and his home as well. He's actually subject to a carriage accident where he's happened upon by Cain, who is the first of the vampires, and we see that he is actually the vampire that actually turned Andrew in the first place. And you actually see Cain in his own werewolf form as he decides to basically chase down Andrew and basically well, to turn him and feed on him. But Andrew then becomes the Demon's Lock, which is something that goes right back to the first volume of the series, as well as the second volume, which are Tainted Love and Rise of the Vampires, respectively. And as you can see, there's Cain actually sinking his teeth into Andrew's neck. You may recognize Andres Sorrentino's name from his current, he recently wrapped up his run with Jeff Lemire on Green Arrow, also from DC's New 52. And the issue ends with a beautifully written Shakespeare quote, actually, from what play it might have been, I don't know, but it's a very beautiful way to end the issue. And you see the polar opposites of both Mary and Andrew way back in 1593. We then have we pick up with Mary, who's of all people, who's actually thrown in with Andrew's former lot, with Professor John Troughton. And Mary in this final arc is actually now human, and this particular issue focuses on Mary and the fact that she's now human, and she is lamenting over what she's lost now that she is human, from the the abilities that vampires have to some of the finer, sort of cooler points, if you will. But she's also lamenting over the price that she's paid, thanks to the game-changing ending of Volume 2, Rise of the Vampires. And she's lamenting on the on the price that she's paid, but also the price that Andrew paid for his part in the ending of the last volume. And Mary is unfortunately happened upon by a would-be mugger, but then Mary comes out with a great line of in a monologue where she says, being a vampire gave me powers, being me made me awesome. And she then proceeds to bite the guy's lip or into his jaw, and then basically throws his head into these, I guess, wooden stakes or spikes that just happen to be laying around. And they wind up piercing the guy's jaw, and she just walks away with a pretty awesome comment, just have a nice day, as the guy's bleeding out. And she's just a great anti-hero in the respect. She's not a good guy. Well, she was evil, she's now a good guy, kind of, but she's doing it for her own personal reasons. And we then are introduced to a new character in the series, Debbie Dancer, or Deborah Dancer, in her mountain retreat in the mountains of Maine with her dog Michigan, who was named after a fallen comrade on a former well, somebody who ran with Andrew and Debbie and the former gang back in the day. And you quickly find out that although Andrew used to be one of the good guys, and he wasn't evil, he definitely is now. Andrew's just awesome as a villain, and he's just incredibly just vindictive and malicious, and just he's just a great villain. But he's also he's got some really cool just standout moments, especially in the next issue where she says that, or he says to Mary that you couldn't kill me when you're queen of the vampires. How are you going to kill me when you're human? And he even says to John Troughton, he actually refers to John as his one of his 3 exes. And that's the thing about Josh Fialkov in this series, is that he really loves some ill-timed humour, which is actually really laugh-out-loud funny. And after a brief action scene, Andrew decides to turn Michigan, or Debbie's dog, which I kind of choked up at, being an animal lover. And I've had, dogs myself in the past, and just, yeah, you don't turn a dog into a vampire dog, but it's pretty cool when you see Michigan in action later on. And so you find out that basically what Mary and John are trying to do is they're trying to go back to how Andrew was made and figure out a way to cure him. But also at the same time, while they're doing their sort of restoration quest for Andrew, he's going around actually recruiting, in this particular scene, Charles Thompson, who's one of the most powerful magicians in the DC universe, and would pretty much beat Constantine, or John Constantine, in a magic showdown any day of the week. And he decides, along with his new protege and his new bride, if you will, to actually lay siege to and attack the castle of the Van Helsings, who are the most foremost killers of vampires in the DC universe. And this is all in aid of finding a certain object that is contained within the Van Helsing's armory. And as I said earlier on, with Andrew being an awesome villain, he just swaggers in and explains the situation as to what is going on outside of the castle walls with Charles and Michigan and his new bride, basically laying siege to all of the Van Helsing's soldiers. And there's some great lines where he says, look, I dismembered your predecessor about 12 times, and that was when I was a good guy. Which is just some great lines from Andrew, and especially when you find out that an old enemy has actually been put back together, quite literally, in stitches. And he says, "Missed me, get it, missed," when he turns into mist to obviously outmaneuver a ground attack by this former enemy who has now been brought back to life, essentially. And so you have you have that going on within the Castle Van Helsing. And then we're also introduced to another form of vampire who is now human, and it's actually Cain, Andrew's sire, and the first vampire. And we get some backstory on Cain in terms of how he came to be, and there's a lot of sort of biblical references, and the fact that Cain sort of did a Lucifer, in the respect that he'd fallen and been cast out of heaven, and was then basically what came before. And he even says, I'm not a vampire, I'm actually what came before, I'm just really, really old. But he even states that he's the first of the vampires in the story anyway. So you have that unlikely ally coming into play, and then to trump it all off, you have John Constantine showing up and basically saying to Mary when she's outside, you and me need to talk. So we then have another party member along with Mary, John Troughton, Debbie Dancer, Cain, and now John Constantine's been brought into the fold, with wanting to basically take back Andrew Bennett and put an end to all of the evil machinations that Andrew's been up to. And so, apologies, I'm just reading off my notes which are off to the side. We then have everybody going to the House of Mystery, where Andrew's now set up shop. And this is where we get full-on artwork from Fernando Blanco, who actually does a really, really good job on the artwork, actually, along with the artwork of Dennis Calero, and as always, the fantastic artwork of Andrea Sorrentino, and the colouring as well of Marcelo Maiolo throughout this series. And so we then have our good guy team entering the House of Mystery, and upon entering the house, each of the members is confronted with the sins of their past, if you will. For example, you have Troughton entering the house, and there's his grandmother, who turns out had impure thoughts towards other women. And then this is where Andrew just appears out of the darkness and says, well, I guess it runs in the family. So you have that going on, and then you have Mary being confronted by all of the bodies of everyone that she's killed throughout the 500 plus years that she's been evil and been Andrew's progeny and his lover for 500 years. And you then have Debbie Dancer being confronted by Mishkin. We actually find out how Mishkin died, and then subsequently Debbie gave her dog the name of Mishkin in memory of her fallen comrade, like I said. So you then have that going on. And then you have a great moment of John Constantine basically turning the tables, where he encounters Andrew's former bride, who I won't give away because it'll spoil the ending of Volume 2, but you see him turning an enemy into an ally and using a deed that Andrew did way back in Volume 1 against him, although it was for a good cause at the time, but you see John basically turning that against him and using the situation to his advantage. And then you have essentially Cain, whose plot or plan all along has been to use the House of Mystery to resurrect his bride, Lilith, from hell. So then, using the already laid plans of the mystics in Andrew's group, he then proceeds to start the ritual to return Lilith from hell. And at the end of the issue, we have some really, oh my god moments. I can't believe that just happened. Just a really shocking ending, and then there's a great shout out at the end to the Princess Bride with Inigo Montoya and his famous line, "You killed my father, prepare to die," by to Count Rugan, Rugan, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And here's a great example of Fernando Blanco's artwork in this double-page spread of, as you see, Cain's trying to resurrect Lilith from hell, as well as his own legion of vampires that he created way back when he first turned Lilith all those eons ago. And there's just some great action. The action is pretty rampant in the last issue of this series, and you see Andrew basically returning to his old self after Lilith has been resurrected, and you then have the action scenes which just basically all hell is breaking loose with the magic and the spells that Andrew has put into place when he wasn't such a good guy. And we have the return of a character that we actually thought dead in the last issue. And there's just some great action scenes towards the end. Like I said, I don't want to show too much of this issue because I don't want to give away any spoilers for those of you who want to read it or go back and grab all 3 volumes and read it that way. But it's just a really bittersweet ending because this series was one of DC's best and sadly most underheralded books of the New 52, and this was cut short way before its time, and unfortunately due to poor sales the series was cancelled after 19 or 20 issues if you count the 0 issue, which you really should because it's an integral part to unraveling the plot to obviously bring Andrew back from the brink, if you will. Excuse me a minute while I take a drink. As I've said throughout my reviews of all 3 volumes of this series, the writing and the storytelling in this by Joshua Hale Fialkov is absolutely fantastic. And I've then gone on, from the first volume of this, I've gone on to read Last of the Greats. I'm currently reading The Bunker from Oni Press, which is actually on my pull list. And I intend to pick up a lot more of Fialkov's work at a later date when money permits. Andrea Sorrentino's artwork is fantastic as ever, and I really need to catch up on the run of his with Jeff Lemire on Green Arrow. I'll probably get that in trade as well. As I said, Dennis Calero and Fernando Blanco both do great jobs on the artwork for their respective issues that they do in this volume. And as I've said before, Marcelo Maiolo's colouring continues to be absolutely fantastic. And as I said, with the bittersweet ending, we also find out how Mary came to be the way she is. Not just from Andrew turning her after he returned after being bitten by Cain, but we also find out how she came to have the outlook on humanity that she had done, and it's just a really heartbreaking and a really just awful set of circumstances. But what is twice as awful is you really see why Mary is the way she is at the end of the issue, where you find out exactly Mary views mankind the way she does and the way that she has dealt with it. And the issue ends with the final speech bubble by Andrew. What hath I wrought? Just a really just, oh my god, wow, you know, Jesus Christ kind of ending to the series. But yeah, like I said, I, Vampire is one of DC's best New 52 books, and sadly, as I said, really underheralded, really underappreciated. If you're a fan of the darker DC books, if you're a fan of Fialkov's work, or any of the members of the creative team on this book, or if you're looking for just a fantastic series to get into, it's only 3 volumes long, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's absolutely fantastic. As I've said, go back and get volumes 1 and 2. In fact, get all 3 volumes at once and read it all back to back, because it's all one continuing story. Just fantastic stuff on My Vampire, and I'm really sorry that this is the final volume of the series. Thank you everybody for watching. Hope you all enjoyed the video. As always, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, thumbs it down. But as I say, if you didn't like the video, by all means feel free to tell me why in the comments below as to why you didn't like the video. And feel free to leave any feedback, any comments on improvements or suggestions suggestions for improvements I can make. And as I've said, if this is your first time here and you'd like to see more of my videos, by all means please feel free to subscribe. And until next time, this is Gambit896 signing off, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.